With all the recent buffs to Boar Cav, y'all may have forgotten about Squig Hoppers, but they're definitely still here. Poison, anti-infantry, armor-piercing, fast Vanguard Cav that are also immune to psychology, which is quite rare for Greenskins, but let's talk a bit more about them in just a second. This is a replay against, Dwarfs, right to the fun, so let's check it out. We've got Ground the Paunch already in the front line, Rock, Lobbers, some Skulkers here, Black Orcs, Orc Boys, a Giant, which is a risky pick against Dwarfs, definitely, but we'll see how it does here. Potentially some Forest to protect, more Black Orcs, Skulkers, and the Orc Boys, and of course that big ball of 4 Squig Hoppers in the back. For the Dwarfs, we've got a whole bunch of Rangers, Miners, with blasting charges, Bugman's Rangers, Rune Lord, and right off the bat, Dwarfs are going to be advancing. No surprises there, trying to take out those Rock Lobbers, which have done some okay damage already. Orc Boys taking all the blasting charges, and these Black Orcs just slogging up the hill here are going to get filled with all of the axes and blasting charges to the face. Pretty painful stuff. The great weapons in particular here, Rangers with great weapons, going to do a lot of damage with those throwing axes. That's pretty painful, but the Squig Hopper Rohirrim are coming from that corner deployment to try and sweep things up. If the Gobos can just hold long enough here, Ground the Paunch himself, popping that Lucky Bear to try and resist some damage, has been absolutely lit up by Rangers, slowed down by the Rune Lord, but here come the Squig Hoppers. Again, anti-infantry armor piercing pretty fast. They have Vanguard. They do not have Strider like Spiders do, unfortunately. But pretty solid overall. That armor piercing anti-infantry coming in very handy here. Plus 10 bonus versus infantry with 19 armor piercing makes them pretty solid. Still not the best stats in the world, but that Vanguard certainly in the poison does come into play here. While now being popped, it really juices up their stats. They're up to 49 attack, 34 weapon strength with that anti-infantry, and the push is on. Definitely just racking up kills so far, rolling up these Rangers in the back line. They'll have to be a little bit careful not to get crossfired completely, but you can see over on this side that the Giant actually came in with the Black Orcs taking all of the heat there. The Giant was able to come in relatively unopposed, and the Squigs now moving in for side and rear charges, proc some terror routes, able to just scatter the Dwarf backline over on that flank. And on this side of this kind of pavilion, sort of, gazebo, if you will, that's elven gazebo here. The Squig Hoppers are going to form up, try and take out the Ulthar's Raiders, get some more work done. And Dwarf Infantry are relatively tanky, but they really can't hold up to this very kind of concise anti-infantry assault here, and especially that Wa timing push was perfectly timed, more or less, to help get a bunch of big breaks. And now you can see, without too much time having passed, the Greenskins were able to pretty decisively flip that balance of power, and this is the most obvious matchup for Squig Hoppers. I mean, quite clearly anti-infantry, armor-piercing, Vanguard deployment, fast cavalry. I mean, all of those things are just like tailor-made to counter the Dwarfs, right? So this is quite clearly the best matchup for them. But there are some other matchups certainly where I think they can shine. Skaven being one, and interestingly enough, Vampire Coast being another. I'll talk more about that at the end, as this battle is probably going to be relatively fast, but hey, sometimes you got to get these quick ones in. Just absolutely brutal and bloody affair. All the grudges being written, but those Squig Hopper, that Giant Squig Hopper rear charge was just so decisive. You can see the Giant now checking back in on things, has taken some significant damage. The crossfire eventually landed on him, but it's a little bit too late at this point, as the Dwarf missile units are all running for the hills. Black Orcs even regroup and get themselves involved a little bit here. And it is going to be, like I said, a pretty quick victory for the Greenskins there. So it is going to be a little bit of an extended discussion this time, for those of you guys who like that sort of thing. But yeah, look at this, 170 kills, 2 XP chevrons at a very short amount of time there. 99 kills, 83 kills, 2 XP chevrons. Just all the kills going around there. And the Giant able to do not a lot of damage, but the Black Orcs and the Giant, sort of one after the other, acting as distraction pieces there, definitely allowed the Squig Hoppers to get all that work done. And 127 kills for Ground the Paunch as well. Obviously, a single entity Chariot Lord going to be very good against a Dwarf build. And this build, man, what is this, 10 Miners? I mean, a pretty heavy all-in, all-Vanguard, but in this situation, I would say you definitely want to cut some of those Miners and just take the Norgrimlings Ironbreakers, because they also have Vanguard, and they're very strong. But anyway, let's go ahead and quickly talk about why you don't really see Squig Hoppers as much as you used to. I alluded to it earlier, but the Boars now, they just kind of offer more for the same cost. Just more armor, more HP. They have better leadership. They are slower, slightly less attack baseline, but 22 extra charge. More weapon strength. Again, they do lack anti-infantry. Again, less... Yeah, Squig Hoppers have less melee defense. They do have a missile block chance. No, they do not have a missile block chance. So, I mean, by and large, the Orc Boar Boys are just better. And this is kind of a little bit goes back to what I was discussing in my State Troop video about paying for special abilities and traits. You do pay for the poison, the immune to psychology, the Vanguard deployment, anti-infantry. The anti-infantry specifically, though, does mean that these guys, I think... Boar Boys probably still hit a little bit harder on the charge because of that higher charge bonus, but in a sustained melee fight, this bonus versus infantry means that the Squig Hoppers do hit a little bit harder, you know, in a sustained fight against infantry specifically, but they're pretty comparable. The Vanguard and the Immune to Psych is an interesting one, and I alluded to it earlier, but if you go back, I have a previous, if I can remember, I'll link to it down in the description below. I have a game up where I use them against Sirens, specifically, because Vampire Coast, I mean, these gals, I should say, spooky gals cause terror, and they do have heavy physical resistance, right, so they no armor, but they are relatively tanky, but the terror and the fact that they count as infantry means that anti-infantry plus immune to psychology is pretty good here. Likewise, the poison helps slow the Sirens down, so they can't really get away from the Squig Hoppers. Squig Hoppers are already quite a bit faster. A little bit on the slow side for light cavalry, but they are faster than, like, Tomb King's light cavalry, for example. 82 speed is pretty good, and obviously against Sirens, who are only, what, in the 50s range? Yeah, 48 even. Definitely can catch them consistently. And, yeah, the anti-infantry means they are going to be hitting decently hard. I mean, obviously they won't kill the Sirens super fast, but they are going to be making consistent contact, and especially you toss them like a quick Kiss of Gork from Lore Bigwa, which you probably should be taking against a Vampire Coast anyway for Brain Bursta. Throw that a quick support spell, and suddenly they'll just annihilate the Sirens. So yeah, specifically there's an interesting interaction there, so I would say against Coast, generally the immune to psychology helps, and the poison anti-infantry, there's a few units that's applicable to. Against Coast. Obviously, Dwarfs is another one. Skaven is also another one. They're an excellent unit for taking out weapons teams. You can fit them in some pretty small gaps, get into the Skaven backline, and shut down those armored weapon teams very, very quickly. Poison anti-infantry, again, coming into handy there. Yeah, Dwarfs is the most obvious one, as I mentioned, but in terms of other matchups where you might potentially see, I don't know, armored infantry is not something that generally the Greenskins have a problem of dealing with, which is why another reason why you don't see Squig Hoppers too much. But in some very specific scenarios where you want like a Vanguard rush potential, they're also okay against some large targets if you really have to press them into service. Like if you really, really want the immune to psychology, keep in mind though they do have lower leadership baseline, right? And you can get immune to psychology on your Boar Boys from other sources now, which previously you could not. So some of the things that made the Squig Hopper stand apart are not so relevant anymore, but they are still something to consider if you don't want to have to allocate resources to giving your Boar Boys immune to psychology. Squig Hoppers can provide you that, and the poison as well means the faster speed means they can trade against some units that the Boar Boys simply can't catch. Definitely something to consider as well. So this is going to be a quick one, probably one of the quickest videos I've ever made, but that's pretty much all I have for you today. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.